up, Nibbles? J-Dawg back with another goddamn interview. We're out here at Evil War fucking Fest. We got a good one for you today. We got fucking Scott from the Almighty. And I said Almighty, goddammit. Repulsion, also known as the goddamn Pauls on the channel, as you all fucking know. So Scott, fucking, you're clearly one of the fucking legendary creators of the genre, helped spawn the goddamn genre at the forefront of it, however you want to call it. Repulsion, I mean, I've always said, like, was what between Horrified and Napalm Death Scum, I consider those like the first like grindcore records. And in discussions on my channel, which I doubt you've ever seen my channel, but some of the older heads would come in and be like, well, back then they're like, you know, Repulsion was just considered like a death metal band, but like that term grindcore wasn't really thrown around. So what is your take on that? Do you consider Repulsion a grindcore band, a death metal band? Did you not think about like?
It's funny because I would say nowadays, if somebody was asking me to describe it, I might say grindcore. But yeah, for sure that word wasn't around back then. And even before, you know, death metal, the term, I remember that compilation called Death Metal that it had like Hellhammer. I considered bands like Hellhammer. In fact, I wrote a review for a Slayer gig in '84 for Sledgehammer Press fanzine. And I referred to them at one point as a speed metal band and at another point as a death metal band. So, yeah, the term was around back then before we were around. But, yeah, I think it was probably defined by Death and Possessed. You know, obviously Possessed was a big influence on Death. Death and Possessed were influences on Repulsion, as well as Slaughter from Toronto, who were probably my most profound influence as far as, like, the combination of speed and heaviness. But, yeah. I mean, death metal works for me.
So that's an ongoing debate on the channel too.
Yeah.
Possessed, Seven Churches, Slaughter, Surrender or Die, Strapato. Are those death metal records or thrash metal records by your account?
I would say they are like the seminal death metal records. I mean, Slaughter was one of those things where I heard it and I was like, this is what I want to do. I liked their combination of like really heavy, sort of like doomy, you know, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer kind of riffs, but they also had like out of control speed. So that was, to me, like they're a defining band. But yeah, I think that, you know, like as far as the arguments that people get into about that stuff, it's fun to debate, but at the same time, it's like it's all fucking great. You know?
Yeah.
I don't really care that much about it. I think that all those bands they were the fucking bands that, like, you know, broke the ground for all of them. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that this stuff is still going strong today.
Yeah. Well, how old are you now? What are you, like 57?
58.
58,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So what year did you like get into like metal? I'm assuming you're going to start off like Kiss and shit like that. I'm assuming that, and then...
Yeah, I was like, well, when I was really young, like 8, 9 years old, the family that lived across the street from us, the kid that was my age, his name was Jim Otten, he was the drummer. And him and he was in like the first incarnation of Repulsion, which was called Tempter, with Matt and I. And then his older sister had a boyfriend, Steve, who was like, you know, he had a cool fucking hot rod and he was like into Sabbath and Deep Purple and all that kind of stuff, Foghat. So he was playing that stuff for us. 74, 75.
You're how old is?
I'm like 8, 9 years old.
Very
and then my dad also, like, you know, liked heavy music. My dad was into like Golden Earring and stuff like that. So I heard all that heavy hard rock stuff pretty early. But the first band, my band that was like my band was Kiss, you know, of course. And then, but I'd already been listening to like Deep Purple and Sabbath and stuff like that. I just wasn't a fanatic yet.
Yeah.
And Kiss was the band that made me a fanatic for like buying records and stuff like that. Then I just went Judas Priest and once I discovered stuff like Judas Priest, it was like off to the races with as far as speed and heavy, to just looking for the next thing that was faster and heavier. I did that for years.
How old were you when, because I only I could think of like 2 people that I've met in the metal scene that are still into metal music that heard Venom, Welcome to Hell, when it was the only album out.
Yeah.
When did you hear Venom? Was it when Welcome to Hell was the only album?
Welcome to Hell was a brand new release. I knew they had. I was a Kerrang reader, you know, so I was an avid Kerrang reader from the moment it started, really. And I mean, I remember even before Kerrang was around, the magazine that spawned Kerrang was called Sounds, and they would do big write-ups on a lot of the guys that ended up writing for Kerrang started out writing in sounds, and they would do these big articles, guys like Jeff Barton and stuff. They would do these articles about the new wave of British heavy metal. And me and my friend Sean, who played bass in Tempter, when we were in high school, we went to high school in downtown Flint, and it was right next door to the main branch of the public library. We would go over there, and they had all of those British magazines, and we would just check them out and make Xerox copies of the ads for the Neil K. Soundhouse gigs with Iron Maiden and Praying Mantis and Angel Witch and all that shit. So we were completely obsessed with new wave of British heavy metal, and by the end of 80 going into 81, I bought Iron Maiden as a new release. I bought Ace of Spades as a new release. On Through the Night, Tigers of Pantang, Wildcat, Samson, Shock Tactics. I was buying all those records when they were brand new. So Venom was the next step. When that Venom record came out, I went to the record store with my buddy Bill, who was a kid we went to high school with, and I bought it at this record store in Flint called Wyatt Earp. I was so excited to hear it that I asked the guy that owned the store, "Can you just put it on the turntable right now?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, dude!" So he slapped "Welcome to Hell" on the turntable, and him and I were just like, "Oh, this is fucking amazing." And my buddy Bill was just like, "Man, you've gone too far." And the guy that owned the record store, he was like, "That's exactly what my friend said to me when I played him the first Sabbath record." So, it was cool to have that perspective of a dude who was listening to the first Venom record. The first Sabbath record when it came out.
Yeah.
For him to hear Venom and go, "This is some new, different kind of shit,"
Yeah.
He got the same vibe that he got from Sabbath.
Yeah.
From Venom. So that was cool, and meant a lot to me at that time.
What did you think of the overt? Because that's pretty much the first record with the overtly satanic lyrics.
I thought it was scary at first. I was kind of I took the album home, and then I was looking at it, and my friend's words, "You've gone too far, you've gone too far," were echoing through my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, did I go too far? I don't know. And I'm looking, there's backwards masking on the record, and I played it, and I'm like, oh, that's really no worse than what they're saying forward. So it's Venom was a total game changer, and I totally went down the rabbit hole of reading the Satanic Bible and all that stuff, and I read it, and I was like, this seems more like a self-help book.
Yeah.
Than anything. It's like a philosophy.
It's more about believing in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same sort of ideas that you get from reading any self-help book, or going to see one of those guys that fucking tell people they can, fucking sell real estate if they want to. It's the same sort of ideas, It's all this positive mental attitude sort of stuff, and just treating people the right way. I was like, oh, this is a cool book, but I wanted it to be a more fire and brimstone, so I just went back to Venom.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So since you were there at the very forefront of extreme music being created, hearing it and then taking it to another level, one of the bands taking it to another level, helping that. What did you think of it as bands like Carcass were coming out and stuff like that? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What was your...
I honestly wasn't listening to a lot of that kind of music at the time, but I was totally blown away when I heard the first Napalm Death record.
Okay.
And hearing the little riffs and stuff that they borrowed from Repulsion on Side 2 of Scum, I was just I couldn't believe it. I was blown. I was so happy. I was blown away because at first, when I first heard that song Deceiver, I was it kind of made me go, yeah, look at my music is so generic that some other band came up with the same exact riff. And then it went into the next part of the song, and I was like, wait a minute, that is our fucking song, pretty much. So I was excited by it. I saw that they were wearing homemade Repulsion shirts and everything, and I was I was blown away. I thought it was amazing, and I was really happy to see that. I was proud, of the fact that wow, these guys heard our tapes and stuff. And then I started putting it all together. I'm like, oh, that guy Shane Embury. I remember him writing to me years ago when he was in another band, and I started putting it all together, and I was like, this makes a lot of sense now,
So by 1990, when bands like Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, shit like that coming out, were you completely checked out of extreme music? Were you I just don't like it?
There were bands that I liked and bands that I didn't listen to, and some of those bands I want to say they were probably just almost too extreme for my taste. You know what I mean? It wasn't that they were too fast or too noisy. It was more the production styles and everything were really punishing. They started really cranking up the kick drums and stuff, and it got almost unpleasant to me to listen to.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, those bands are all fucking amazing. Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, they also like took it to another level. You know what I mean? Like they went beyond what we did. So like we got to an area where it was like, I feel like we were as extreme as we wanted to be, and we were like, okay, I've made my statement, and you know, we started writing other material after we recorded Horrified, but it was like we kind of lost the focus, and we had a couple of songs. I remember one was called Infected. That was like the song that was completely finished. It had lyrics and everything, and it was more like Radiation, the song Radiation Sickness. It was more of like a Slayer beat kind of thing. And I think we were like kind of tired of the blast beats, which were sort of an accident to begin with. It wasn't really what we intended to do, but you know, once we started doing it, we got really proficient at it and we were really fast. I was like, okay, this totally works. We have our own thing. But yeah, I mean, I loved Autopsy. I still love Autopsy.
Well, see,
Entombed were always a great band.
It's funny, I was going to bring them up because when you saw it, I was specifically going to bring up Autopsy, Nihilist, Entombed. I mean, they were literally saying in their thanks list and shit, and who they're inspired by, Repulsion.
Yeah.
You like it? What you're seeing this, and basically the band at this point's basically already quit.
Yeah.
What's going on in your mind? Like, oh, maybe we had something. Or,
yeah.
like,
I mean, there was a moment there where I thought, yeah, we should have like kept going. And then when we did start playing again a little bit around that time, around 90, 91.
Yeah, and that's when you guys did the Excruciation 7 inch.
Yeah, and I just felt like we weren't really. It didn't have that spark, the magic fairy dust or whatever. A lot of that comes from just being young and stupid and like overly enthusiastic, you know, and like you can't really replicate that at a certain point. I feel like I could probably do a better job of it now than I could at the time because I was just perhaps like I didn't understand. I hadn't really worked out what Repulsion was at that time, you know what I mean? So it was weird. It was like we started playing, but it wasn't really. I mean, I think we're better now than we were in 1990. You know.
Well, what was the reason? Yeah, before the 1990 breakup, why did you guys stop? The first time
we had just recorded the album, which to us was an album. A lot of people have the misconception that tape that was recorded in June of '86 that became Horrified. A lot of people call that a demo, but it wasn't. We recorded that with the intention of releasing it as an album. We'd already made a demo like that we thought was pretty good. We didn't get any response from any labels. We got great response from all the fanzines, but the labels were just not interested. So we're like, well, let's record an album. Maybe if we record a whole album and start shopping it around, somebody will hear it and go, okay, cool, they have an album, let's put them out. And we recorded that, sent it to all the labels again, and no one was really interested. So we were kind of like, at that point, Aaron, the other guitar player, he had a son that was born 4 weeks after we recorded the album. And then Dave, the drummer, was just kind of like, you know, wandered off, you know. It wasn't, we never really broke up. It just kind of like.
Just got busy, kind of.
Yeah, everybody just kind of like went in their separate ways and never really, we never reconvened back.
Well, eventually something, I mean, Necrosis Records put out the LP.
Yeah, 89.
But I mean, like, how did that, so it got picked up, like, it's like.
It just took 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who contacted, was it Bill or Jeff or?
Oh, I think both of them, really.
Yeah.
We were contacted by the, yeah. We were contacted by Earache. And we signed an agreement with Earache. There was no mention of Necrosis anywhere. That was like, they basically like, you know, sideswiped us with that one. Like, we got the records in the mail and we look at it and we're like, what the fuck is Necrosis? Like, I'd never heard it. I thought we were signed to Earache.
Yeah.
So, there was a lot of little, I don't know what the fuck was going on behind the scenes over there, but like, you know, they swapped out the album cover art on us without telling us. They changed the record label imprint, whatever.
Oh, so that the cover, that wasn't supposed to look like that?
No. We submitted a different cover.
Oh, I love that cover, though.
Yeah, it turned out cool. And a lot of people don't know this because they didn't change the credits on the back of the cover, but that painting was done by by Jeff Walker of Carcass.
Wait, the Necrosis LP pressing?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
And, it was a drawing that I did that I, you know, nicked
he just
from
redid it.
I took. I mean, I redid it from a comic book. I saw this image in a comic book, and all it was really ever intended for was to be on a sticker. You know, so I made this little skull sticker with the Repulsion. The first time, right when we changed our name to Repulsion, I drew the logo on a piece of paper, and then I drew that skull on the same piece of paper. I still have the piece of paper at home. It was done with a ballpoint pen. And so we made stickers of that, and they got all over the world from tape trading and stuff. And Jeff and Bill just thought that's the image that needs to be on there. They were right. They were in the end, they were right. They switched the album cover to that skull, and that was the right thing to do.
Okay. Then when you came back, yeah, I kind of see what you're saying about the spark wasn't there. It was different, even though I like it. The Excruciation 7-inch, which I didn't know until years when Relapse did that double disc compilation, which is I think is a really nice goddamn release. It has everything. That the Excruciation, it was actually 4 songs.
Yeah.
And they just put Excruciation, Helga Lost Her Head.
Yeah, that was our decision to just put those 2 songs.
Oh, okay. Because the other 2, it was a House of Freaks and
Rebirth.
Yeah,
those songs. I felt that we put the 2 best ones on the EP, but you know they're not. They're different. You know, I think it's good music, especially Helga Lost Her Head. I think is a really.
It's become one of your guys' hits.
Yeah,
and
but
the band Impaled from California, you familiar with them? They cover it.
Yeah, and Cam Lee's band. I'm not sure. I think it's Massacre. I mean, I know he's in Massacre, but I mean, I can't remember which one of it because he's had a
few bands.
Yeah, I can't remember which one recorded it, and I'm not sure if it's been released yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one I know I own.
I saw them play it actually. They played it in Atlanta. We played with them a couple years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you like the Massacre demos when those were coming out? Maybe.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've always been a fan of what Cam does. You know, his voice is great. It was seminal when those Death demos were coming out. Him and Chuck were both great vocalists, and you know, it's a shame that things didn't work out differently back then. But you know, because it took a while for Massacre to get going.
Yeah,
it took a while for Chuck to get his thing going. But I mean, so much great music came out of that little circle of friends from back then.
Yeah. So you were there since the Death demos, right? And then getting those.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What did you think of Scream Bloody Gore, Leprosy? Like, did you have
I thought it was great.
Did you have a cutoff for them, or you're like, it's kind of getting to where it's too different?
Honestly, for me, like after Leprosy, pretty much. I mean, not that they went on to do some really cool stuff.
No, I get you, but
it just wasn't my
much,
cup of tea. I really like the primitive. My favorite Death stuff are those really shitty recordings, like the one demo they did on a boombox called Death by Metal.
The first one, yeah.
And then the other one they recorded in the attic of a fucking guitar store, yeah.
Reign of Terror demo?
Yeah. I've been to the guitar store where they recorded that.
Oh,
it's
no
like
shit.
a fucking 2-track recording studio or something in the attic of a music store in Orlando, Florida.
Whatever. It's a kind of rumors floating around. I've heard some. I don't know what's true, what's not. No one seems to know, so I figured the only person that would know, whatever happened to Dave Grave. I heard he's
around. Yeah, we tried to get him to come to the show tonight, but he's got to work. He said, I texted him today, and he was like, I got to work at 4:30 in the morning, so I can't make it.
So the graveyard stories of him shit aren't true? Or are they?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably blown out of proportion. But
okay.
Yeah, they're true.
Yeah, because I mean, he looks like
the everything you need to know is in the. If you look at the CD, the article from the newspaper is reprinted in the liner notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember seeing that for the first time. Because when I first heard Horrified, I was in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And I was wearing the Horrified shirt, the Worm Infested Rotten Flesh Sticks Really Lush shirt. Fucking principal there didn't like that shirt. But I remember even just from seeing Horrified, Dave stuck out the most. Band from like, this guy's got to be a serial killer. He just looks weird. And then he kind of like is off the map. Like no one really. Everybody asks like, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, yes,
he's still around, but he doesn't. You know, we tried to get him to come to the show. Like he's.
When was the last time you've been to? When was the last time you've been to Michigan? Let's say when was the last time Repulsion played Michigan?
Repulsion hasn't played in Michigan since 2003.
Okay. Oh shit.
We played in Flint at the Machine Shop, and before that would have been
the 90s, early.
Yeah, like early 90s. Yeah.
Now, when did you move to California?
I moved to California in '98.
What was your reason for that? Just, I mean, I see Flint.
Matt lives out there, the guitarist of Repulsion, and we've been friends since we were kids. I was living in Chicago. I'd moved from Flint to Chicago, and I was kind of ready for a life change. and I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I happened to be talking to Matt on the phone one day, and he was like, "You should come out to LA and like try your hand at like post-production." So he was working at a post-production house in the film industry. So I went out there and got a job in a working in the tape vault at a post house, and just ended up having a career in the entertainment industry and on the technical side of things. But yeah.
So
I've been working at movie studios for years.
So you don't miss Flint then?
I love it. I love going there. I love coming to Detroit. It's great. But yeah, I miss it for sure. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't moved out to California.
Yeah, okay. When officially did you restart Repulsion just as basically a show band? Like what year was that?
It was about 03 when that CD came out. As a lark, Matt Jacobson from Relapse was like, would you guys mind if we just put you on the booking roster? And we were like, you can put us on there, but nobody's going to book us. They put us on the booking roster. I think one of the guys who, maybe Scott, who was in Brutal Truth back then, was doing the booking at Relapse. They had an in-house booking agent at Relapse. So he was like, they put us on the booking roster, and next thing you know, like Milwaukee Metal Fest asked us to play.
Yeah.
And they offered to pay our way. It was the first time anybody had been like, "We want to pay for your flights, hotel rooms." I'm like, "What? Really?" So really? Like we were like, "Okay," So we did that. We did it a few times, and this is, I was just talking to some friends earlier today about this very moment in time. It was like we started playing again, and it was the original lineup, or the lineup from the album, which is actually the second lineup, because it originally started with just me, Dave, and Matt. It was a three-piece. We were about to record our first demo, and we were doing it with our friend Ken Roberts, and he worked at a radio station where they had a 2-track recording studio. So we couldn't do any overdubs. And we were like, well, we want a rhythm guitar track behind the leads. So we asked our buddy Aaron to play guitar on that demo. And then we were like, well, you might as well just stay in the band and play the gigs with us, because he was our buddy, and he was around, he was always around anyway. So that's how we became a 4-piece. And then I got sidetracked a little bit there. But, so anyway, we played a few reunion gigs with that original lineup. But we realized it just wasn't going to work because Dave and Aaron lived in Flint. Matt and I lived in LA.
So in the 2000s, Dave did play as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't. Okay, I didn't. Yeah, I always noticed it's like maybe you and okay.
I think he played about 2 or 3 shows with us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a Maryland Death Fest, and we did Milwaukee Metal Fest, and then we played one show in Flint. And at the Maryland Death Fest, we were real sloppy because we just weren't prepared because we were all coming in from different cities. And I remember after the show, I was talking to Matt Harvey of Exhumed in our hotel room, and I was like, man, we were kind of sloppy tonight. And he was like, yeah, but at least I could say I saw Repulsion. And I was just like, oh,
it's like one of
it
his
hit me
bands.
right in the gut. And I was like, that's the worst review I possibly could have heard, like.
From the nicest
and like, so, but I'm glad that he was honest with me like that, because it made me just go, you know what, we can't do this anymore because the logistics just don't work. So I told everybody when we got home from that gig, I'm like, I think I'm done, because unless we can really go out there and play the material the way it's supposed to be played, we can't do this. And then, everybody went their separate ways. And then Matt Olivo, the guitarist, he went up to a wedding up in the Bay Area, and it was a bunch of Exhumed people. And Cole Jones, the old drummer of Exhumed and Cretin and everything, offered like, hey, if you guys ever want to play, man, I'll play drums for you. All of a sudden, we had this drummer who knew our material like the back of his hand and was young enough that he could blast for 45 minutes straight. And we rehearsed with him, and it was just like a fountain of youth.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we were better than we ever were. We had a drummer who, like, really, I mean, no offense to Dave. Dave, is a pioneer. He's a legendary guy in this whole scene. But Cole came at it from, like, an understanding of what that music was and, like, just played it perfectly. And all of a sudden, we just sounded better than we'd ever sounded. you know. And I was like, well, this is crazy. Yeah, we can. So we rehearsed, and all of a sudden we realized like we could play shows. And I feel like Cole ended up retiring, and when he did, you know, Matt and I had always said like when Cole's done, we're done. And then Cole quit and was like, I got to stop playing gigs. You know, he's raising a family and stuff.
Yeah.
He was like, I know this guy who can step in. And we were like, I don't know. And he turned us on to Chris Moore, and Chris is like, you know, he's right there with Cole. He just gets it. And like, you know, it enables us to be as good as we ever were, you know.
Yeah. Now, because both Cole and Matt Harvey played in Repulsion at a time, right?
Yeah.
What did Harvey do? Just guitar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we had a couple other guitar players after that, all from the Exhumed family. You know, like
Mike Beams, he did it too?
Mike Beams,
okay, I
and,
didn't know
and
Beams
Marissa Martinez also. They both played guitar, but it had nothing to do with either of them. We're like friends with both of them, and like I love both of them. But we just started to realize like when there's two guitars, it just got too. There was too much. The sound is too mucked up. We have distorted bass, distorted guitar, add another distorted guitar, and all that speed, and it's just
sounds too muddy.
Yeah, it just sounds too muddy, and so like we started practicing with one guitar. It was like, this is the way we need to. This makes it sound like what we envision it to sound like.
Yeah. I mean, so how did people react then? Yeah, in the '80s when you guys are playing, and maybe even before you put out the quote demo album.
Yeah.
I mean, you at pretty much at that point, you guys would have been considered like the fastest band, maybe Cryptic Slaughter, you know, around there.
Yep.
I mean, how are people reacting? Like kind of like when almost
like
blank
stares.
That's what I figured. Like they didn't know what to think with it. Like what the fuck? I can't like. They don't even know how to like respond to it.
We compensated for what we were lacking in crowd appeal by being funny.
In between songs,
I would just like tell jokes. We would like throw a fucking bag of chocolate donuts into the crowd, and they would just explode into crumbs. And I would go to the Goodwill on the day of a show and buy a bunch of old like easy listening records, throw them out in the pit, and people would just the records would just end up in shards. And like if you look on some of the old photos, you can see like we're on stage and there's a stack of records propped up against the drum kit, and like the record right in the front is like got Fonzie on the cover.
And that's why.
Yeah, because I bought those records that day at like Goodwill. We just fucking rolled them out into the audience, you know.
That was before basically the album was recorded or it was given out. Probably at those times.
Oh, these albums they were.
No, I'm talking about the because it was recorded as people called it a demo.
Oh yeah. That was like
So I'm assuming
after we recorded that, I don't think we played another show again for like 7 or 8 months.
Oh no, okay.
Yeah.
Now, was there anybody that really took to it? That they did like it? They got it? I mean,
you know, people like Shane Embury, those people, some of the Napalm Death guys, you know, and of course Bill Steer and Nick Anderson and all those guys from Sweden, you know.
Did you when you guys were fuck was I say? God damn it, lost my goddamn train of thought. Yeah, totally fucking spaced me. God damn it. The other thing I was going to ask then is Death Breath. It's you, Nikki. This is shit. I remember when that Let It Stink.
Robert Pearson from Rune Magic.
And then Grave Jorgen sings on it. Like
Jorgen sings on it.
How did that?
Eric from General Surgery sings on the EP.
Did they just contact you? Hey, do you want to just do basically guest vocals for a couple songs?
Yeah, you know what happened is Albert Mudrian released that book, Choosing Death. And like I think all of us old farts read it, you know. And because it was like the first real book that had our history in it, you know. So like everybody, I remember doing the interview with Albert, and he told me, I'm putting out a book on the history of death metal and grindcore. And I was thinking like, good luck, kid. And I hung up the phone after I did the interview. And then like, you know, however many years later, I walked into a bookstore and I see the fucking book sitting there. And I'm like, oh wow, this is the book that guy wrote, you know. So I bought it, took it home and read it. And Nick did the same thing. And he just decided it kind of got him like nostalgic to play death metal again. And he hit me up, and I was more than happy to do it. I'm a huge fan of everything that he does.
So you like the helicopters and all that too?
Yeah, I like all of this. He's just brilliant, you know, brilliant musician and a really super sweetheart of a guy. And all those guys, the guys that play in Death Breath, Robert and Eric from Merciless, they're all so much fun to be around.
Even though you like it, then what is your take on a band like Entombed? How drastically they changed their style on the same name of the band? And I asked that because one of the questions was going to be, so it gets to the two-part question, was I've heard that you said in interviews or maybe publicly, and it just got around to me, is that you would never record another Repulsion album because it wouldn't be the same, it wouldn't sound the same. But a band like Entombed, like granted, bands allowed to do whatever the hell they want, they kept going on, and obviously from Left Hand Path to album 5, it's completely different. Like you're not in the same band.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different precedent set there, because those bands did, it's even like Carcass. They had a precedent of making records and making them all different, So like when Carcass left off with Swan Song, and then they were making a reunion album, like I don't think that people really had any expectations for what it was going to sound like, because the last thing you heard from them was drastically different than the first thing you heard from them.
Sure.
So, and I don't feel that kind of pressure. It's really what it boils down to with Repulsion is just time and being old men, and I have actually gotten more into writing that kind of stuff. I got a lot of ideas, but at the same time, like I'm being honest with myself when I say I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to that. It takes a long time to put together a good song.
Yeah. So if you had the time, you're basically insinuating that you would be up for doing another Repulsion record.
Sure. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't have a job. Yeah. I didn't work. I didn't want to work.
Yeah.
I was like leeching off my parents, and like I lived at their house until the day they were like, all right, you got to get a job or you got to go, So like, and then I was like, oh, okay, I moved in with my friend and like paid the rent by like collecting bottles and cans and putting on hall shows or selling records, hustling however I could to get money together. And but my rent back then was like $35 a month or something. So I lived on the cheap, and all I did was like sit around and think up lyrics and write riffs and put songs together. And when I do something, I want it to be really good. And maybe I'm too hard on myself or too whatever. Like there's probably a certain amount of like fear, whatever. It's a little bit of everything, like, oh man, it's got to be as good as it was or whatever. There's a lot of factors.
I will say,
bottom line is, it's really my fault that we haven't done anything.
In general, though, I mean, I'd like to see, like, it's kind of cool not to see another Repulsion record, because usually when a band comes back, they put something out. I generally don't like it because I'm like, it's nothing like they used to. However, there's exceptions. I thought the Comeback Possessed album, I really liked it, and I just picked it up. I'm like, oh, this is gonna suck.
Yeah.
I was like, I put it out. I was like, oh shit, this is actually pretty fucking good.
Yeah, Sacrifice, they go away for long periods of time, and they come back, and their material is always fucking good. Like it's like they never went away. There's some bands, that are really good at doing that sort of thing. Like they come back with new material, and it's like, fuck yeah. But most of the time, what happens is that material comes out, and it's like people listen to it for 15 minutes, and they go on the internet, and they go, oh, hey, the new so-and-so is pretty good. And then when, that stuff just ends up falling away, and you're back to the classics again. You know what I mean? Like, but I love Motorhead. They made like 25 fucking records, and I like them all to a certain extent, but I really love the first one up to fucking Iron Fist or Another Perfect Day. Those are I guess I would even include Orgasmatron in there. But like after that, it's like I bought every fucking Motorhead record loyally every time they came out with a record, but it never got back to that level again. And I feel like at this point we're mostly playing festivals where you fly in and you play for 45 minutes, and it's like people probably want to hear Horrified more than anything. There's always people that are like, oh, play something new, or like, are you ever going to make anything new? But at the same time, everybody likes the old shit.
Yeah.
And like it's not like I stopped making music. Like I've made records with a whole bunch of different bands. When I look at all the stuff I've done, I'm like, oh, I guess I actually did some other stuff. And it just accumulated over the years. It's just usually I make one record with a band or something. I did a record with Church of Misery. I did one with Death Breath. I did a record with Cathedral. So I was in a rock band in LA called the Super Bees. I was in another band in Chicago that was like a power pop, almost like kind of somewhat grungy indie rock power pop band called the Hush Drops. Great songwriter guys that were in that band, and like we put out records, and it's just like I've always been doing something. This is kind of like always different.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if there was an opportunity where it just all fell into place, I wouldn't say it's outside of the realm of possibility. At the same time, there is nothing like imminent or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. When you guys were playing, that was a question I forgot to ask. When you guys were playing back in the day in the '80s, how far outside Michigan did you play, or did you not?
Never played.
Nothing outside state?
Well, one time we were supposed to play in Toronto, and we showed up at the border, and they just looked at us, and they were like, "Turn around and get the fuck out of here!" They're like, we collectively had about $25 between like 6 dudes in the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were like, "You're not going to Canada today, son."
So yeah, like when you said you reformed in the early 2000s, then yeah, MDF, yeah, we'll fly you out. You're what?
Yeah. So we were on our way to Toronto to play with Slaughter, which was like the dream gig.
Yeah.
There's flyers for it out there. That was right before we changed the name to Repulsion. I mean, we might have even.
Oh, it was under Genocide.
Oh, actually, we had already changed the name to Repulsion by the time the gig.
Why
happened.
did you? What was the official? So you changed it from Tempter to Genocide, then Genocide to Repulsion. What was the reason you changed it?
Well, because all those names were kind of. I took Tempter from Trouble, the band, and also from the videotape at the, of the movie The Antichrist, which had the U.S. name of Tempter, which was like an exorcist, Italian exorcist.
So you just changed it because it was used, or you're afraid of legal reasons?
Well, we changed it from Tempter to Genocide just because I was like, Tempter is not heavy enough. And then Genocide was like, I never really liked that name. I didn't really, as I got a little bit wiser, I started realizing the name, it's kind of got like negative connotations to it and whatnot. And,
you think?
And so like, I was like, I wasn't in love with the name, but it was like, it was there. It was a real lazy choice, which I took from a Judas Priest song. And then, like at that, Unleashed to the East, like every song on the album, Running Wild, Exciter, Tyrant, Genocide, you name it. Like almost every single song on that record, there's a band named after it. Sinner.
Yeah.
So we got a couple cease and desists right around the same time. One came from a Japanese record label called King Records, and they had Genocide, the band from Nippon, and they were like, "Hey, we have a band called Genocide, the Japanese Genocide. You guys are using our name, like you got to stop." Around the same time, I got a letter from one of the guys in the New Jersey Genocide who were signed to New Renaissance, I think, that submit the Genocide record, and they were saying the same thing, like, "Hey, that's our name." Yeah. And I'm like, okay, there's 2 bands telling me they want me to change the name. So I had just written the song Repulsion, and I had never seen the movie yet, but there was like a horror book that I had that my mom gave me for Christmas. And it had this cool, like, high contrast photo from that scene in Repulsion where Catherine Deneuve is going down the hallway and all the arms are coming out of the walls. And I just thought that looked really cool, and it just said, a scene from Roman Polanski's Repulsion. And I was like, Repulsion, that's a cool word. I looked it up in the dictionary, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a fucking cool word. Because I didn't know what it meant. I was like fucking 19 years old. I didn't know what the word repulsion meant just by looking at it. I'd heard repulsive, but I didn't know repulsion. So I looked it up. I'm like,
I'm surprised you didn't just settle for repulsive then. Like, it's in between you.
Yeah, I don't know. I just liked the word repulsion, and I wrote it on a piece of paper. I scrawled it out, and I'm like, yeah, it looks cool. That's probably why it was repulsion instead of repulsive. It just looked, the N and the R sort of balanced each other out. And I was like, that's part of it to me. A name has to sound, roll off the tongue, and the logo, the word has to look good written down.
Yeah.
And as soon as I wrote that song, I just liked the way the word looked on paper. And so I was like, Repulsion. I just showed up at rehearsal one day with the logo in hand, and I told the guys, like, hey, we're going to call ourselves Repulsion from now on. Here's the logo. They were like, cool. Nobody cared. Like, it was like,
cool.
We were all just young kids having a blast. We weren't like, oh, I don't know, really, we
Who was the oldest at that time for the original lineup? Who was the oldest?
Aaron is a few weeks or months older than me.
Okay.
Matt is like a year and a half, I think, younger than me.
It's all very,
roughly.
very close.
Yeah, and Dave is probably somewhere in the middle there. He's probably like 57 right now or something like that. I think he's about a year younger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say those guys all still listen to the metal music at all, or?
Not like full time.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. But I mean, it's in the DNA. You know. I mean, I listen to metal a lot, especially if in my car or whatever. I listen to it more there than I do at home.
Is there any band in the last, let's say, 15 years that's come out that you legitimately like? Not you're friends with, not, hey, yeah, we play with them, they're cool. That you're like, shit, I actually bought that record. That was good. Like,
yeah, I like one of my favorites was In Solitude from Sweden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've actually busted their balls a little bit on my channel.
Oh, yeah?
Only because they have the Merciful Fate influence, right?
They do have some on their early stuff. There's a bit of a Merciful Fate influence, but it's not like they're not as progressive as Merciful Fate. But there's definitely some leanings.
There's a reason I use them as an example because of the band that I love. Actually, bring them out to my goddamn fest, Dead by Dog Fest 2025. Goddamn it, is a band from Germany called Attic, and it's like the vocals are literally sound like King Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
The killer leads, killer gods, and people always bring up In Solitude and the band Portrait, with the exception of Ghost.
Yeah.
They're getting the King Diamond Merciful Fate reference, and I was like, I think Attic destroys all those bands.
I haven't heard them, but
I highly recommend. Well, if you like Merciful Fate and King Diamond, I highly recommend checking them out.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's bands that pop up that I'm like, oh, that's
But nothing.
Cool.
Is there anything death metal wise that hit you in the last 15 years of a new band?
There's lots of people. When I do hear stuff like that, it's usually like Swedish stuff.
Okay, yeah, I can see.
I like that sound.
Yeah. So even all the Dismembers and shit like that, when it came out, you're like, oh, that's cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I like that they incorporate a little bit of like rock and roll riffery. It's like it just gives a little more heaviness and a little more dynamics or something,
Well, if you listen to like the Carnage Dark Recollections album, which is one of the first Swedish death metal albums, you can tell there's just seeming like a punk beat to it on parts.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely has a little bit more. It's death metal, but it has more memorability to it, I guess, rather than just blurring together like a fucking giant turd,
Yeah, I really liked the riffing that those bands had and like the drumming style. I was never big on like a lot of
blast beats,
double bass.
Yeah,
like
got overly,
too much double bass.
Even though you guys are kind of somewhat blamed.
Yeah, but there's no double bass.
No, I know, but as far as like I mean, I'm kind of curious. What did you guys even think when you even heard the final product? We're like, oh shit, yeah, this is kind of crazy.
When Dave tried to bring a second bass drum into the mix, I was just like, put that over on the side. It ended up becoming a stand for like a coffee table for drinks.
Was his goal just like, I'm just going to play as fast as I can? Like it's what, or you don't?
It wasn't his goal. The goal of the band was like to play as fast as we can. But we originally wanted to be, that sort of Slayer type beat. But which we do on a couple songs like Radiation Sickness. But it was like Dave couldn't play the double like, whatever you call that hand, the hand that you play the hi-hats and the ride cymbal with. He couldn't do that like double, so he was just going ting ting, 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 ting like a polka drummer would do.
Yeah.
And like so we're like, okay, if you're gonna do it like that, then just make it so fast that you can't tell, So we just started speeding up, and it was by accident. And then more and more, the more he did that, like that, we called it the cheat beat. That was our name for it. The more he did that cheat beat, it just kept getting faster and faster and faster. So you can hear some of the songs some of the early ones we wrote, like 6 Feet Under and The Lurking Fear. The lyrics are really like blah, 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 because there's a lot of syllables in the lyrics, because those songs are written to be played at like Slayer speed, and they got sped up so fast that it just became like this blah, 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 blah. Some of them, like Lurking Fear, we can't even play because it's like the riff. It's a miracle that we recorded it, because the riff was made to be played way slower, and it just turns into a jumbled mess if we try to play it live.
Basically, don't be yelling out Lurking Fear tonight.
Yeah, we won't play that one.
Yeah.
It's the only song from the album that we don't play because it's just like
it
doesn't work.
Do you ever have trouble remembering and being able to vocalize all the words? Because it's kind of a tongue twister and a lot to remember. Because you don't got you don't got super long lyrics, but they're not short either.
Yeah, there's some
fast.
Yeah, there's always a song that I struggle with, and it changes from time to time, and it's like, why can't I'm fucking You know, sometimes I remember all the words, and then sometimes there's this one song where I'm just like, why can't I remember the fucking word? A lot of it probably has to do with the fact that most of our gigs are like fly-in, so you got jet lag and everything else, and it's like, when I'm sitting at home rehearsing, I'm like, I remember all the words. This is amazing. And then I get to the gig, and I'm like, where'd those lyrics go? And it's like, oh, I've been talking to people all day long, and my brain is full of new ideas and new...
Did you just fly in today or yesterday?
Yesterday.
Okay, so
we rehearsed here yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, Scott. Well, is there anything? I don't want to take too much of your time. Is there anything you want to promote, shout out, or anything you're working on, or say?
Not really. Thanks for having me, man. It's
no problem.
A pleasure.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing you. I only got to catch a few songs of you when you played MDF in 14, I think. We were vending. Oh yeah. We were busy as fuck. I got to walk away, take a business. Oh shit, Repulsion's on. So I watched like 2 songs. So this will be the only time I finally seen the full set. Awesome. You know, it's not with the review that Matt Harvey gave you at the original lineup. But
I hope not.
But thanks for your time, man.
Thank you,
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Later, goddammit.